All right, bene, bene, bene. Stiamo arrivando. Hi, guys. Hi, everybody. I got some stuff for you today to discuss. And if you have any question, if you can write them, right? Put them in the messages and then see what I can do to answer you, right? I'm going to give it a few more minutes because I see that you guys are joining. Quite a lot of you, so I want to wait for a second until the number of people that join kind of slow down. Now it's going out like a machine gun. All right, so we can talk about this briefly, though, right? So this is a. So I've been asked, right? I've been asked by some of you to discuss how the old masters were able to capture the dynamism of a pose, probably drawn from imagination. So, or even from life, right? The way they were capturing the dynamism of these poses could have been from life too. And but it's the way they were. Let me see. There's something off in the audio here. Miss, just a second. Oi. Audio. No audio. Strange. Let me get this going on. Can you see me? Can you hear me? So apparently there's no audio, right? Okay. All right, you can hear me, right? Yes, seems like you can hear me, right? Okay, good, good. All right, so I have received a few requests, right, from some of you about discussing how the old masters were able to capture this sense of dynamism and sense of movement and power and action, right? With these beautiful, quick sketches, right? So just to give you an example, this is Pontormo, right? Mannerist, right? Mid 1500, more or less, and this is eventually an evolution of the Florentine structural system that we're going to discuss later in a little bit more detail. And this instead is the French Academy. This is the Barg method, and you see how the poses are relying greatly on models that are not moving, right? They had to be still to be copied accurately. So why this difference, right? Well, there are many reasons for those, right? One is that during the Renaissance, the artists rediscovered the human body using direct knowledge, direct experience, right? Experience that was acquired by dissecting body. So when you dissect the body, you get in contact with the physicality of the human organism in a way that is quite direct and indelible. You cannot really forget that, right? So you really think masses, volumes, the dissection act is really physical, right? So you have a certain understanding of the physicality of the body that is then transmitted in your artwork, right? During the French Academy, instead, the art of drawing tended to be more directed specifically toward certain uses, which was the representing the glory of France, the cultural product of France, and as such had to be codified. We go also through the neoclassical period at that point, and the neoclassical period tend to polish the body, making it more idealized and less physical, right? Less physical because the neoclassical was expressing certain ideals that had to be conveyed through a scaffolding, that the human body, that could not really be too connected with the real person. It has to be idealized, makes sense? So that's, just quickly, right? This is what happens. So this is Pontormo, right? Beautiful works. Look how gorgeous these sketches are. And what you see here, right? What you see here is something that I'll show you later on when I'm gonna do a quick demo. Look at those initial blocking in. See that? Look how essential these are. Look at these, how essential these are, right? Here we have this initial scaffolding, right? See that? This initial scaffolding when he blocks in the foot as a wedge, right? See that? As a truncated cone here, like this, right? And then you had this, what is called pentimento, right? Or he was trying a position for the leg. He didn't like it. He moved it here. You see that? So you can see how the dynamism is not just in the final result, is also a constant in the drawing process. So the thinking, right, the thinking of how do I do, what do I do, really gives you, it's thanks to this dynamic thinking, the dynamic thinking that is, the artist changes his mind, right, moves things around to kind of figure out what the best, more expressive pose is, right? Not necessarily about copying things exactly where they are. So the life, there's also life and aesthetic, of course, right? This is another example of Pontormo, another sketch. Look how beautiful this is, right? See how gorgeous these are, very modern, right? All these wavy lines in here are really not necessary for that, but probably he just liked them to, they were adding movement, right? Just beautiful, beautiful sketches, see that? So, what is the, actually, let me show you a couple more drawings, right? One is Leonardo's legs. These are absolutely gorgeous. Look how beautiful they are, right? So see how here, Leonardo had a deep knowledge, direct knowledge of anatomy, right? And he dissects the body. He dissects it probably 100, 200, something like that, right? And then he puts them back together, right, in the leg, not just as a specimen, just like piece of meat, but he puts back together this muscle with aesthetic. Look how gorgeous these are, right? Beautiful, beautiful drawing, right? So the aesthetic result, the end result, the movement, the narrative, the passion, etc., the life, the sense of life, was really important for these artists, right? So anatomy, when it was applied to the arts in the early 1400s, was really directed toward creating more convincing human figures, right? Not figures that were somehow just symbols, right? Or not very precise. That was not the point anyway. But during the Renaissance, yes, the narrative became more convincing, exactly because the figures look like real people. You can identify with that more deeply. So this is another example. This is Raphael. Look how beautiful this is. Speaking of action, right? And I discussed about this image in another, I think last week in our live session, but about this dynamism between these two, how these two kind of move in the opposite direction compared to the main action, and how at the same time they funnel the power of the blow that is going to be inflicted on this poor soldier. Right? This is Raphael, right? Similarly to what we've seen in Pontormo, you see also in Raphael the initial blocking in, right, of the form is very essential, very basic. I see, look at this in the background, right? So he sketched it in like this, and then he built on top of that, right? Makes sense? So let's look quickly now at the Florentine structural system. How does it work, right? So the Florentine structural system starts, which originates in the 1400, right? Starts with this is codified, let's say, by Alberti, Leon Battista Alberti, an architect, and he says, well, when you draw the figure, you should start with the skeleton first. Why the skeleton? Because it's a structure, right? It's a big structure like that. So the structure gives solidity to the form, right? This is what we are scaffolding, right? He compares, Alberti compared the human body, right, to a building. If the building is not, the foundation of the building are not sound, then the building will collapse. So he says this is the foundation, right? So this is my quick interpretation of stereometry. We'll discuss about that later. But this could also be seen as the structural foundation. On top of this, I layer the muscles, right? Layer the muscle on top of that. I don't just put the muscle anywhere they look good. I always connect the muscle with the landmarks. See all the landmarks, and here the spine, the scapula, the seventh cervical, the iliac crest, the posterior superior iliac spine, etc., etc. So you block it, the main volume of the muscle. I don't care much about the fiber in most cases. I just care about the volume, right, like that. From here, eventually, you go on with a line drawing, right, where you kind of clean up all the marking, etc., and select the essential lines, right? See, starting from a very, very faint ghost image like that, right? And gradually sculpting, chiseling the forms, right? And eventually we move on to the tonal range. This is not finished, but it's just to show the progression, right? Show how we go from the structure, the skeletal structure, to the muscle, to the line drawing that defines the superficial volume, and then to the light and light and shadow, right? The tonal range, expressed in the tonal range. Division, light mesh and shadow mesh, for example, and then gradually finding 2, 3, 4 more values like this, right? So let me show you now because then from here, right? But the idea is, so how do they get so good at creating those quick expressive drawing, right? So this is another example, starting point, right? With the skeleton, the stereometry, various level of conceptualization of the body, right? The red would be the skeleton right here, and then on top of it, I put this. This is actually the angular stereometry, and that is what I came up with this. There are many variations of this. This is my version, where I make the forms of the body a little bit more rounded, right? I mean, rounded because they are getting closer to the human form, right? So this is a sketch that I did. This is the sketch that I do in class before when I teach, just to study the pose. So when I go around, I already understand the pose and I can tell the student more, right? So this is a quick sketch, right? 20 minutes pose. And this is an interpretation I did later, how I could block in these forms a little bit more quickly, essentially, right? Actually, when I did this, right, I'm sure I blocked in something like this first, but much lighter, almost invisible. In fact, you see this line here. Let me see. This line here, probably lines like this, right? They were making up the whole drawing. But in here, I wanted to insist for didactic purposes. So this is another example how you can break down the form in its main volume, right? Which are easy to measure, right? And you can see we can really make up the dynamism of the figure, right? This instead is how eventually you can use this method, right, to create a much more dynamic work, right? When I drew this, let me see if you can see it. First, I blocked in very, very, very thin, faint lines here. See that? Very faint lines. Eventually, from those, I blocked in more with a blue pencil. Also, a little bit more volume, like this, right? Blocking in the light mesh and shadow mesh. And then with the red pencil, I went over it and chiseled the form more. So let's see now if I draw a figure, right? Using this method, right? So let's see, how do we do it? Well, we block in. I like to start with the rib cage, right? And I like to keep the pencil like that. Actually, I'm going to use the blue pencil, right? I like to use a blue pencil for this purpose, so we can differentiate better the two stages, right? So so blocking the rib cage, right, like this. Should make it bigger, right here, like this, right? I'm going to make it slightly darker than I would normally do because I want you guys to see it, right? But this is just the scaffolding, right, that helps you measure the figure. So I'm blocking the pelvis like this, right? And then here maybe I'm blocking the head like this, right? Like that. So now I want to check, right? So this is the exoskeleton. I like to start with the exoskeleton, right? Because the exoskeleton is the big volume of the body. The arms and the legs are attached to it. So it makes sense that I start with this. And then I move toward the arms and legs, right? This is a thinking that is very important to maintain when we draw structurally using the Florentine structural system, right? So, because we consider the physicality of the body. So now, here we can block in, let's say, a leg here. Actually, before we do this, let me check if I had the proportion of this correct, right? This would be the proportion relationship, right? How one segment of the body relates to the other one and to the other and to the other one proportionally. Because this figure is fairly straight, I can still check how the head relates to the torso and to the pelvis, to the ribcage, to the pelvis. Usually, this segment is about 4 heads, right? More or less, right? Because it depends also on the movement. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so this head's a little bit too big. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller, like this, right? And I'll check again, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that's good. I leave it like that. So now the head is proportioned in relation to the rib cage, in relation to the pelvis, right? Now here I can attach the thigh, right? And I block it in foreshortening. See that? So when I'm blocking something foreshortening, I want to think also of this as a volume, right? And then I want to think of the section of that. That helps me to really block the scene more convincingly as a volume, right? So now let's see here. I can block in the other leg, right? Going out like this, right? Like this. Keep it soft, keep it light, right? And then this leg maybe goes maybe down that way, right? And this leg that way. Or let's do like Pontormo did. We block one, we look at it, we don't like it. Let me check, right? Let me do this, right? All right, that looks a little bit better. I like it more, right? So I leave it there, right? Arms, right? So it's the clavicle, right? Arms usually are with the arm down along the body. They are usually below the level of the clavicle. So I can now draw the clavicle starting from the base of the neck right here, and then I can block an arm like this, right, and down like that, right? This arm here maybe come down like this, right, and goes out like that, and I have my what I call the structural ghost, right? The structural ghost of the figure, right? So now, if this works, right, I notice one thing. I always draw, once I draw the volume of the head, the rib cage, and the pelvis, I always draw the center line, because the center line helps me to see the direction, right, the direction of the segment, where they are oriented. And I think spatially about this thing already, right? So now, let's block in now a little bit more, well, one more thing, I'm sorry. If, so I mentioned that the arms are going to be below the clavicle, right? And when the arms are down along the body like this, they're going to be pretty much right here, at this level here, below that. But if I lift my arm, the clavicle will follow, right? So, and this is now the head of the humerus, and now this is going to be the arm, right? Makes sense? So, I want to check all these landmarks: the clavicle, the sternal notch, the pit of the neck, right? The iliac spine, the pubic bone, the sternum, the costal arch, because they're going to help me to pose the figure properly, right? So here I'm going to add the volume of the scapula. So now let's add a little bit more volume like this, right? Like this, right? And here, like this. Here now imagine there's a fold here, right? Because maybe the person is like leaning forward slightly. Right? Here I'm going to have the sternal oblique like this, right? See that? Sternal oblique goes from covers the side of the rib cage here, and then it connects with the iliac crest, which is here, and that's the iliac spine, So this is the sternal oblique here and here, right? This is now going to be the rectus abdominis, right? Which we can draw as a volume like this, right? So we start thinking now in terms of volume, see that, volumes? And then from here I have the leg. The root of the leg, more or less, is halfway between the iliac spine and the pubic bone. So the joints are going to be here like this, right? If we are sitting, this gets higher, gets closer. The upper margin of the thigh gets closer to the iliac spine. But, you know, I'm doing this out of my head, so I'm not going to pay too much attention to this very specific detail. So here we're going to have the, I'm sorry, I need to sharpen this up, right? So I like to use this color pencil. These are Faber-Castell Polychromos, and I like them because they are hard and they make sharp lines if I need to. So they're very good for the way I work, right? So I also like to shave my pencils expose an inch or two, an inch and a half of the lead, in this case the color pencil, and then with a sandpaper I sharpen up the point to a regular cone, more or less, and I can use it also flat like this, right? So this is the thigh like this, right? And here I'm going to have the volume of the adductors like this, right? So, and this is the volume of the quadricep like this, right? Adductors and quadricep, right? See that? This is the patella, and here I'm going to have the shin, right? And this is the calves, right? So here, see how you can block in really efficiently, right? The main volumes of the muscle or the anatomy, etc. So this is going to be also the adductors, right? Usually the adductor here is going to be squeezed, right? Adductor and hamstring, they're going to be squeezed here when somebody's sitting, and then we're going to have a reduction of the volume here when we are free of the seat. Let's say there's a seat here, but also at the end here we have tendons, right? Those portion here is going to be thin, right? Therefore, and change direction, because this is going to be the sartorius. It's going to go down like this and go to the goose foot. Now this is the peak of the quadricep, right? Block it in like this, right? And then it tapers. It goes down like that. That is the knee, and this is now the gastroc, right? The calf, like that, right? So here, similarly, we can block in a little bit of volume like this. This is the vastus medialis, right? This is the patella, vastus medialis here too, right? And now here, let's see, we can block in. This is the tricky part, right? So we have here the serratus, right? Serratus is this muscle here that creates those digitation, right? And behind it, we have the latissimus dorsi and probably the scapula under there, right? So now as I lift the arm up, right, I'm going to have now the pectoralis following up a little bit, right? And this one instead will remain lower, right? So the pectoralis from here will go under the deltoid here. This is the deltoid is going to be here like this, right? Pectoralis goes under the deltoid and the bicep goes under the pectoralis. So I'm going to have this kind of set of muscle interacting spatially like that, one on top of the other on top of the other one. Is the tricep like this, right? And it's the bicep like that. And maybe I need to shorten up. I need to shorten up the upper arm. So here's the trapezius going to be a little bit bunched up because of the lifting of the arm. This is now the neck, right? And here's going to be the trapezius. So now from here, I block in the deltoid. This is the pectoralis, right? Here I have the deltoid coming down like this, with a little bit of space here, right? A deltopectoral triangle like this, right? And the pectoral will go under the deltoid. So here I have the bicep, and here the forearm like that, right? So blocking brow ridge, nose, eyes, mouth, right? And this could become the initial sketch, trying to see if I like stuff. Then I can take a red pencil if you want, or actually, let me block this in a little bit more volumetric area. So the blue would be very helpful to block in the sense of volume, right? Sternocleidomastoid here like this, right? The sense of volume, and give the figure some solidity, right? Like that, right? And then now with this, we're going to carve out more in detail, right? All these forms like that, right? And then we see if eventually we like this, right? We might not like it, right? If we like it, then what we do, we call the model, if we had done this from imagination, and ask the model, could you pose like this? I would like to copy it. Or we ask the model to repeat the pose in case we worked quickly as a way of studying the dynamism, right? So this is what you can do from imagination once you understand these segments, right, of the body. Again, all these segments are clearly separated, see that? And they are related properly with each other, right? So I want to show you how to, let me check if I have some question, right, from you guys. I don't see them. I'm going to check them out later, right? Let me see. Ok. Edoardo, puoi mandarmi le domande che mi fanno gli studenti che non le vedo? Sorry, I was talking to my brother. He's helping me out with your questions, right? So anyway, so let's see how this works in a very quick way, and then maybe I'm going to show you some images from my this is another image like that. See that created like this. So and then maybe we're going to look at images from my sketchbook, right? I would like to discuss also about the sketchbook, right? Yeah, MDM D170, you said I want to start from scratch, but the design is the hardest part. But by design, I suppose you mean this initial thing, right? So I'm gonna address that later, right? To show you how you can improve your sketching, right, part, right? So okay, so let's see. I'm going to go down to the basics, right? Down to the basic to show you how the method works, right? Practically, right? So this is the human body divided. I can do this, right? I can do this, right? Here's a line, right? And we now want to assign to this line here represent the height of the figure, right? I want now to divide this in 7.5 segments, because I'm going to use the 1 to 7.5 ratio or proportion, right? So now divide in half again, right? Half again, and half again, and then again, right? And now we have 8 segments. I want to use the 1 to 7.5, so I take off the last half, and now I have 7.5 segments, right? So so another question, this is also polychromos, right? This pencil I'm using are all polychromos. Let me show you if I can see okay. They are polychromos, Faber-Castell, both of them, right? Polychromos, Faber-Castell. This is a non-water soluble, right? These are round, right? These are non-water soluble, and they have a harder. They are harder, so I like the sharp mark that they make, right? This is Prussian blue, and this is some sort of blue-violet, red-violet, right? So anyway, somebody asked you a question, I answered the question. So now here, we block in. This is going to be one head, right? The measure of the head, right? Like this. The first block is one head. Then we have here two spaces. That's for the rib cage, right? I'm going to block in the rib cage here, and I'm going to block in the pelvis here like this, right? So now in man, these measurement, the width of the pelvis and the rib cage are going to be the same. Now from here down to one and a half spaces here, I'm blocking the legs, right? This is stereometry in a nutshell, right? And then I have now 2 heads, right? Half, 1 and a half. So this is for the lower leg here and for the feet, right? Like that. So now I block in at the level of the jugular fossa, the front of the rib cage, right? Which is the front of the rib cage is a little bit lower than the back of the rib cage, right? And the neck is here like this. So now here I have the arm starting, the humerus, right, below the level of the clavicle, and here I have now the arms. The upper arm arrive more or less at the level of the navel, which is here. The navel is here at the top of the box of the pelvis. And here like this, I block in now the forearm, right? Forearm and hand. So now, if I know this proportion, right? This is a typical proportion, right? If I know this proportion, I could block in. This is how I use it in sketching the figure, right? For example, so I block now intuitively, instinctively, the forms of a figure, right? I block one head here like this, right? And then I block in now the rib cage like that, right? And I block in the pelvis, right? Like this, right? So now I know that these should be 4 heads, right? Now I check, the head looks a little bit too big, right? That's fine, I can make it smaller like this, make this a little bit. Then I measure, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, good. This is good. So this is proportion, right? So the head is proportion, the right size in relation to the ribs and in relation to the pelvis. So all of these 3 work well together, right? Now, this is a way to speed up drawing the legs, right, and making it more accurate. So this box in here, right, this is the box of the pelvis, right? So if I divide the height of the pelvis horizontal in 4 segments, right, here, and here, right? At the upper quarter here and here, I had the iliac spines, right? At the lower quarter, I had the pubic bone, right? The genitals are below the pubic bone. So now, this gives me a bunch of things. This gives me the midpoint, right? That's the midpoint of the figure, more or less, right? More or less. These are the iliac spine that help me to figure out if the pelvis is tilted, right? And they also give me more or less the top of the pelvis, so I can know where the pelvis stops at the top. And now, halfway between this level and this level here, I have the root of the leg here. That's where the thigh begins, right? So these are very important landmark. Again, iliac spines, pubic bone. Now here, I have my figure like this, right? And I find the midpoint, more or less, which is the lower quarter. Do I need to measure? No, I just know if this is the top, okay, more or less that's the lower quarter. So now what I do, look at this. If I take this measurement here, right? That's the midpoint we have seen, right? So if I take this measurement here, I then bring it down, and I have the length of the feet. So I do this, right? And bring it down here. And now I have down here the position of the leg. So now, then I decide what I want to do with the legs. I can do it like that, right? For example, right? I can do it like this, right? I can do any kind of pose. I can experiment with pose, but I know that this part and this part are going to be proportion, meaning I'm not going to have any more legs that are too short, too long, too something, or not enough something, right? So now once I decided the pose, right, let's say I like this posing here. Now I can block in now the thigh here like this, see that? And I know where the thigh starts, right? So this iliac spine, that's iliac spine, right? And it goes from here up halfway, this spacing here. So here, that's the thigh, right? And this is the knee, and this is the calves, and this is the foot, right? Like that. So I block in very quickly now the volumes, right, of the leg, like that. And I can, following the direction, I can block in the other one here like this, right? This is just to visualize things, right? So now here, I would have the iliac crest here like this, right? From here, I block this in, right? Block this in like this. This is the external oblique, right? The costal arch will be about here. So now, remember, I didn't do it here, but I'm doing it now. The center line will help me to direct the rib cage or the head or the pelvic toward various direction, right? Like this. But also, see what I can do. I can capture this, right? See that? See how beautiful this is, right? So as I string these segments together, I want to make sure that they kind of have also an aesthetic aspect, right? This aesthetic sense of movement and dynamism. So you can appreciate this more, right? If you understand the body from the structure, the skeletal structure, right? Knowing then how the muscle then can apply the muscle over the structure in here, then the muscle will also be involved in the aesthetic and dynamism of the figure, right? So here I have an arm down like that, right? Here an arm down like this, right? And then lifting the arm like that, see if I like it, right? Right? Or maybe here like this, right? And then maybe this goes back behind, I don't know, making up stuff, right? So now, that's how you would use this method in a standing figure, which is easier. When we get into a sitting figure or a crouching figure or foreshortening figure, that's going to be a little bit more different, right? But let me show you how I have some. These are my sketchbooks. These are my sketchbooks, right? So sketchbooks, I like. This is a student of mine did the sticker and they gave it to me for anatomy. Right? This is my sketchbook. This is a moleskin, right? It's a moleskin, and in this book in here, I also drew quite a few of the drawing that eventually appear in my second book, right? These are all studies that I was trying to, with which I was trying to visualize the human body from different points of view. So stereometric volume, right? Point of origin insertion, that's the bicep, that's the coracobrachialis. This is the skeleton, right? This is the synthesized, very simple skeletal structure. This is sternal form. This is all the muscle. So you can look at the same subject from many points of view, right? No, this is a skeleton. This was a model we had, a great model, Daro, and I drew first. I did this, right? I did this drawing of him, right, from life, right, and then eventually from this, I looked at all the landmarks, the bumps, right, the malleoli, olecranon, etc., and then built up, and then looking at the volume, built up the flake version, and from this I created the skeleton. Actually, there should be another one, should be another skeleton, more accurate. I don't have it. These are all things that I do to kind of visualize the muscle in a more synthetic or way, right, if possible. And one thing that you can also do is some sort of reverse engineering, right? So this is the pose that I copied from life. This is Heather, one of my favorite models, and from life, right? And then I put tracing paper over her, the drawing, and I reduced her body to basic volume, right? You can do that too. You can start from this and draw the figure, or you can draw the figure and then kind of study it more in depth by superimposing the stereometric volume. This operation will make you understand this overlapping, right, of the figure, of the volume of the body, right? So this is male, female, things that we'll discuss eventually in the future, but these are all, this is not an experiment. So these are live poses, see that? And then 1 and 2, right, like this. And then eventually created this flake version of the model, trying to study the anatomy, trying to study what makes this folding here, right? What makes this volume here, etc., etc. Right? So, see how many, you can really create many studies with a sketchbook, right? But this is where I do the sketches in the class, where I copy, I do figure drawing, right? The model here, like this, right? And let me show you now a couple of, you also do studies copying from the master, right? For example, this is, I think this is Carracci, no, I think it's Guercino. A quick study, I copied an original by Guercino, using somehow the same loose approach that they were using. If you look at all the drawing of this master here, first they have this ghost tracing, and then they develop it, they build on top of it, right? Kind of really, it grows, right? And this is another one by Guercino. This is done, the copy, right? But this is done with a pen and ink, right? So, this is one of the sketchbooks, right? I like this format. How big is this? This is 9 by 9, right? And the paper is quite good. And what I have here, these are quick studies, quick sketches I do in the classroom from life. So that just to study the pose, right? You see how this pretty much here the approach that I described, right? Even like that, right? Don't have to be super precise, but try to block in quickly, instinctively, right? So for those of you that ask me how to start with a design, right? With probably you meant the composition or the dynamism, etc., right? But design, right? You can start something like that. The more of these you do, the better results you will obtain, right? So this is now starting from this, and then carving out a little bit more detail, right, from life. See that always the same things that we have seen in Raphael, right? And we also see in plenty of master. They were using this very faint blocking in, right? Then see this, because these poses here, you cannot really, they don't last long. It's 5 minutes probably, right? So you had to be quick in capturing the essence of that pose. And if you know this proportional relationship, right, you don't worry about copying the size. You know how the size should be, more or less, right? And you block it in quickly, right? So same thing here, right? See that? Then here, all these are very, very quick, right? And I also kind of like the aesthetic of these marks that are almost abstract, right? So sitting poses, overlapping, right? Overlapping like this, right? More dynamic, almost coming toward you, sitting, right? And then these start being a series of yoga poses, right? And see that, so it's being like yoga poses, which are quite beautiful and interesting from here, or this was a very good model, right? Tabitha, we don't have her anymore. I love this pose in here. She was just great, right? Models really make a big difference in the outcome of your art, right? Your artwork. So then I'm going to show you drawings that are a little bit more finished, right? Somebody asked about eyes and nose and mouth. Yeah, you can also do that. I would like to discuss that in the future live, because there's so much to discuss. But yeah, you can block in also detail of the face, and you study them structurally the same way you would study the body, right? You study those in detail. So more poses, and then eventually here I have some poses that go different body types, right? So this is a heavier model, and then similarly, see that all those initial lines, right? See that all the initial very, very thin, right? And the more of these you do, the more precise your initial line will become. Meaning, the appreciation of the pose will become much more sharp, right? This is a male model. Male models tend not to have the same dynamism as female models, right? So this one here. Okay, so these are also studies of proportion, right? This is a model that she was petite, and her ratio head to body was about 1 to 6.5, or a little bit more than that, right? This model instead was much taller, and her ratio head to body was 1 to 8. So one thing you might want to do in some time in the studio, you want to, before you start drawing, measure the head, right? Imagine you're at the distance, right? The distance. Imagine this is the model. You're at the distance. See how many times the head fits into the body. So you do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Does that make sense? So you then, or this one, yeah, the same thing, but this is much. It's a little bit. She was a little bit shorter, so she was petite. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5, right? So measure this proportion so you can find the specific proportion relationship of the model, meaning how many times the head fits into the figure, right? Then just like the genitals, this is another pose like that. Very quickly, you see how these initial marks are quite loose, right? Like that. That doesn't matter, because then you can refine them more accurately, right? So this is an experiment with some ink, a reclining model. I like to block in very quickly with a wash or two the shadow pattern, the shadow mask, right? Because you start creating an interesting aesthetic, right? This is the yoga pose. Yoga poses are fantastic exercise because they present they present the body in ways that are not really we are not used to, right? So they challenge us, and they are also beautiful, right? So there is a question by Rilke, can you divide into shapes? So I prefer to divide it into forms rather than shapes, because so the shape, let me show you quickly, right? This is an interesting question, right? All of this method here is based on forms, right? Why is that? Because they consider the three-dimensionality of the figure. And as I consider three-dimensionality, I can also consider how figures like this, volume like this, will overlap, right? Like this with each other, right? If I want to put somebody in foreshortening, see that how I can block in now, let's say, the head here with the nose, the neck. This is under the rib cage, right? This is now in front of that, right? If I draw a shape and then the leg, let's see, I have a leg here like this, right? See how this leg develops like this, right? Maybe, right? And all these are overlapping with each other. If I draw a shape, I tend to create a flatter image. So I prefer to divide these in shapes. So when I draw the figure, I don't draw the figure with an outline, right? I don't draw this. I don't draw this, right? But I draw this. Makes sense? So this is form, this is shape. What's the difference? The difference is that when I draw the shape, everything here, I follow in the profile, is on the same plane. But in reality, when you draw, you want to think, all right, this is the rib cage, right? This is the rib cage, right? And then it goes here. The rib cage, though, doesn't go here. The rib cage continues here. So I'm going to stop and move here. This comes from behind, right? And therefore, this from here, this comes forward. And then doesn't go here. That's the gluteus medius. It goes here. And from here, this goes here like this, right? This is behind now, comes forward. This is going over that, right? This goes in, not here. So basically what I do, I draw this instead of this, I draw like this, right? Like this. And these become forms. They are much more easily rendered as forms, right? This is a name, right? This is called differentiated line. And this is called undifferentiated line because it puts everything on the same plane, right? So they're important distinctions. So I don't use shapes, I use forms. So as I've been describing them here, right? So book on color theories, then I would discuss that on another occasion, right? Because we are now discussing drawing more than colors, right? How can we prepare the sketchbooks? So this sketchbook, yeah, you can find, depending where you live, right? When you live. This is a Fabriano Quadrato Artist Journal. It comes in a couple of sizes. This is one. There's one that is a little bit smaller, one that is more rectangular, but the paper is quite good here, right? This is quite good paper. So you might want to, and it also comes in, see, white, right? Tan, coffee, lighter. So it's not just one color. You have like 3 or 4 different colors like that. And it's quite good. And you can put it in your backpack when you go to school or to art school and use it just for sketches, right? So this is good. The other sketchbook, this one here, this is a Moleskine, right? Moleskine is it's a very good product. And the paper is very smooth. Paper is very, very smooth. And it can sustain quite a lot of nice working. Not so much the washes, although some wash you can do here, but for the drawing is quite good. Very smooth and permits you a very good level of detail, right? So Moleskine or Fabriano, these are the two that I like to use because in both cases, the paper is high quality and it's permanent. And the paper will not disintegrate, will last a long time, and you can really do finished works into here too, right? You can really do that, right? So let's see other questions. If you also follow me on Patreon, I have a lot of videos that are available. And by now, I think I have 40 or 50, where I discuss all these things in detail, and then you can follow the courses dedicated to stereometry, dedicated to drawing the figure in perspective, drawing the figure for shortening, and so on, right? So having seen this, we've seen this, right? Sometime you want to block in a detail, right, of the model. Male model, see all these sketches are obtained using that method that I showed you early on. But, and you can see again, right, the initial light, the initial light mark right here. See that here? What is that? Here, right? That's sufficient as long as you see it, right? So I blocked it here, but when I drew this, I said, no, I don't like it here. I'm going to move it here. I didn't even need to erase it. Makes sense? Because I see that. I don't need to make it darker than that, right? So then we have, this instead is much more finished, right? But still the same thing. See how here there is a very, very faint line in here, right? Then there is, let me see, what is it? Yeah, there's not many, right? This time, it was kind of, when it blocked it was pretty precise already, so I didn't need to change it much, right? But this was probably 20-minute poses, so we had time to kind of block in all the volume. You see how they overlapping on the form, like I was saying before, right? These are formed, right? So this form in here, right? Going back to the form versus shape, right? This line here appeared very just, subtly from here, then develops here, and then suddenly doesn't go there. It's not a shape, because this belongs to the breast, so it goes here, and then dissipates and stops. Maybe connect with the space in between the ribcage. Then this start behind that, right? And then peaks, and then doesn't go there, right? Doesn't go there, but it comes here like this, and so on and so forth. See how it gets gradually, right? So the thing is, when you do this, you can also start with this line here, softer. See that? If you make it softer, it will move back. So you increase the sense of that. You see how this part in here is just barely visible. If I would make this sharp, these two lines in here would come up at the same level. But I create a sense of softer, sharper, and softer again. That will move them back and forth more easily. See that? Etc., right? Okay, so there's a question, interesting question. In the sketches, do you need to bring character in the sketches? Well, not necessarily. For example, when I do this, right? They don't need to have character, right? They have to be right? So what do I do when I do these sketches? Okay, I worry only about the proportional relationship, meaning how high, how wide, how deep the various parts are, and how they are angled together. So if there is something that is the result is also aesthetic or expressive, that's not what I'm after. But if it happens, it happens. But I try to say, okay, what do I need from this? I need to capture, to move it, right? To move the puppets, and to see what it will look like in terms of dynamism, etc. And mostly, if the parts or the body are correct in relation to each other, right? Then once I understand this, then I can add more detail like this. Like this start becoming kind of an aggressive pose, right, or a defiant pose or something, right? Yes, in that case, when you move toward the aesthetic, right, and the realism of the figure, then yes, you want to try to add something beyond the technical the proportion, right? So this part in here is to understand the scaffolding and blocking together correctly, right? And then as we move here, now in this, instead, you will start to, this scaffolding here, right, in here will disappear. You don't want to see this, right? This is the structure that is almost like it sacrifices itself. Once you're done with that, it has to go, because this now has to become your main subject. If you see all those segments, right, then it's too technical, right? This now, the scaffolding sustain this, but that's his job, is accessory. the job of the scaffolding is accessory to this. This is the most important part, right? So I pose it like this, right? And here study also the peaks, right? This is all the notes that I do when I teach, and sometimes I look at things, I see those peaks in here like this, right? What happened, what doesn't happen, right? And then more yoga poses, right? More yoga poses. Always very interesting, right? So usually when I have a model that by now I know them, right? That is good at yoga. Sometimes I ask him or her, mostly her, would you like to pose a yoga pose? They usually say yes, because they can also get the workout, right? And so on, right? And so on and so forth. See that like this. So also there should be an image. There's a male. So when you have this lightly toned paper, you can also use white to kind of help extend the tonal range and increase a little bit more of a volume, right, to the whole thing. Okay, this eventually is another exercise that you will be able to perform once you have understood the muscle, right, where they are, and you would study the muscle from the charts, right, in a controlled position. But then eventually you can have fun, meaning, let me show you. So first, you will study the muscle from this point of view, right? Side, right? Front, and back, right? This is the drawing that you've seen in my one of the drawings you saw in my sketchbook, right? And back, right? Once you have these three views, right? In this book, I discuss also. See that this is the drawing that you saw in the book, right? Then you start imagining, right, the three-quarter view, right, the pose from an angle, etc., etc. But first, you need to know what the muscle like in a control position, front, side, and back, right? And then take a pose like this, and then you challenge yourself by trying to figure out, okay, what's happening here? Where's the muscle? What is that bump, right? What is that bulge, right? This is Lou. Rebecca is another beautiful model. She was very, she's an actress now. And this is Alina. This is our beautiful quick poses, extemporaneous poses. Going back to one of your questions, right? Do I need to include character? Yeah, eventually that is the character, aesthetic, dynamism, right? Something that transcends the physicality of the figures. Not just about drawing something correctly. Yes, it is, but that is not usually the main purpose of an artist, right? You need to know how to do that, but then this becomes a vehicle, right? A vehicle that transmits emotion, aesthetics, rage, dynamism, passion, and depression and whatnot, right? Whatever you want to convey, right? So you need to be able to, actually, you want to charge your, this becomes like signifier, right? You charge your sketches with something beyond the pure physical representation, right? Some sketches like this, right? Some sketches like this, very quick, right? Very extemporaneous, right? See how you can do this in 5 minutes, less than that, for 3 minutes, right? They don't have to be super precise, but that's when you capture the passion, the dynamism, the movement, right? When you blocking with a couple of strokes right here, the sense of movement, then your works becomes alive, right? Becomes alive. So let me see if we have some more questions, right? So this we adjust this. How can I improve my drawing skills? You need to draw and draw and draw. But you need to draw following a method, right? It's not just drawing. So your drawing, as I show you now, right? When we do this, the whole time I was explaining why, meaning drawing like this drawing is a visualization of thinking process, right? So if my thinking process is clear, then the drawing will be clear. You don't want to imitate. You want to understand what you're doing, and drawings can be very complex if you want to, right? If you understand the forms, if you understand the complexity of the forms, your drawing will become equally complex and interesting, right? It's not just going to be something that looks pretty. It's going to have something that goes beyond that. So I would say draw. But when you draw, try to justify what you're doing with a method, but also with adding some passion, right? So how can you take it from shape and muscle anatomy to shading? This is very interesting question. I would dedicate another live to that, because I can show you how to block in, go from shape to form, right? Shading, and it will take some time, right? So so do we need to jump? So this is a question from Bagos. Do we need to jump into the anatomy, or there is another step before going to anatomy as a character designer? I think that go with anatomy. Go with anatomy. Once you understand the anatomy, but at the same time, use these stereometric. So I had another one. Stereometric renderings of the figure, right? Divided in blocks like this, because again, this is the scaffolding. This is the scaffolding upon which you can put the muscle. You can put the muscle on top of this, right? Yeah. So, but anatomy, definitely start with anatomy, and but not just anatomy from a medical book. Anatomy for artists specifically, because for artists, you just don't need to know what muscles are. You need to also know how to use them and how to apply aesthetics to those. So I would say anatomy, structure, figure structure, and it will really help. It will really help. So think that today the world is of illustration, of art, etc. There are incredibly skilled professionals that do this. They are incredibly skilled professionals because they know all of this stuff. So there's no shortcuts. You just need to understand all of these things. If you want to, especially in character design, you're gonna make a difference. It's gonna make it's gonna take you maybe a couple extra years to acquire that knowledge, right? But it's gonna make a difference. It's gonna make you independent from imitation, and it will permit you to develop your own style, right? So if you have soft of these sketchbooks, no, I don't have soft. I don't have them, but I probably could print them, and that's a good idea. Could probably make quick, shorter books where I have all these image of reference, and put them on the market. That's a good idea, right? So now another question. Do you have any classes coming up? Yeah, if you so you can follow me on Patreon, right? And I have a lot of video there that you can access, right, with the minimum of money that you need to enter. You have access to I think 40, 50, right? And so, or you can follow, you can look up my website, and there I offer synchronous courses online on anatomy and watercolor, etc., etc. And you can You can also acquire those in the recording, so you can watch them later. So, any other question? Let me see. I think I missed some of your questions, right? Book of color theory. So, but there are definitely quite a few questions, guys. Thank you for all these questions, because they gave me some inspirations for future live session, right? Let me see if there's another question here. So Keith, hi Keith. Keith was my student. Are the books going to be sold as a box set? They're thinking about that. The publisher. Now my third book is going to come out in December, and they probably will offer it, but I'm not sure when. Right. So hues and clues. Let me see. I agree with you. Draw and draw. We are doing 3 minutes model study day. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Model day for 1 hour. My question is, what is the role of the duration while we are sketching? So, that's a very important question. So, my classes at the New York Academy of Art are 6 hours, right? So, when I teach anatomy, it's 3 hours of demonstration where I create big life-size drawings of explaining anatomy and structure. And the afternoon is 3 hours where the students copy from the model. The poses are typically 20 minutes, but they're very often repeat the same pose 3, 4, 5 times. And that gives the student time to, in a sense, dissect the figure, right? And then start maybe blocking the skeleton, blocking all the forms, etc. In the figure drawing class, instead, I can have also the same pose repeated the whole day for 6 hours. So, depending what you need to do. Or in some cases, you want to do the quick poses, right? 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? But it's important to go from very quick, short poses to long poses. The long poses really are not forgiving, meaning you will have to spend a lot of time on a figure, and a sketch might come out, good by chance, but a drawing that is, it takes you like a day to do. At the end of the day, you see if that work is good or not, right? So I would definitely say go with the short poses, but the long poses are very, very important. So you can start with I say 2, 3, 20-minute poses, but then eventually you want to repeat the same pose 3, 4, 5, 6 times. So it will be 20 minutes times 6. And that will really give you time to study, read the forms, etc. So those are the duration of the pose is important, but depending on the duration, you will create different works, right? Because of course you cannot create a very finished work in 3 minutes, right? So you need to have a mix of length of poses, right? Let me see. The shapes, right? We discussed the shapes, right? Ryulki, I hope Ryulki, the answer for the shape was clear, right? Shape versus form, right? Male and female, can you recommend according to color theory? So shading, student fine arts, so anatomy, do you have a light drawing? Yeah, I do. Your texts be sold as a? Yes, they're going to be sold as a set, probably, right? Not yet, Keith, but they are thinking about that. Books on color theory, I don't have them here now, so again, I will discuss this in the future. We can go more in detail about color theory, but I don't have any text in mind now, so I will discuss this more in detail in another live session, right? So guys, this session will be available on Patreon, and probably we're gonna send it to the people that actually I don't know if this is possible, but I'll make this session available. But definitely you're gonna find it on Patreon, and so you can watch it again, right? In case you watch it again. So if you don't have any other questions, I would say let's go take a break and then go eat something, right? Thank you for showing up in such great numbers, and I'll see you the next live, right? Bye-bye.